Hello, happy Autism Awareness Month. My name is Dr. Gillian Erhabor, and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist at the Lurie Center for Autism. And I'm coming to you today in the hopes that you are all healthy and safe following what has been a really challenging year for our country, our world, and particularly families who have children on the autism spectrum. And, I'm here to talk to you specifically about the transition back to school and, what some tips may be to help make that transition just a little bit easier. So, as parents and caretakers, I want to really encourage you to start thinking critically about what the day-to-day differences are between home-based learning and in-person learning. Because as a general rule, we can really start to address those differences and start to make incremental changes towards a full return to in-person learning. And one of the first things I think about as a parent and as a clinician are bedtimes, and how that for my family was really challenging to transition from a more lackadaisical bedtime routine and wake-up routine, because in-person learning is a lot more flexible, and transitioning back to a stricter bedtime and stricter wake-up times. And so what I'd really like to encourage you to start doing is to start transitioning your child back to an earlier bedtime, or to the bedtime that they typically have within the realm of the school year. So even if that means transitioning them 5 or 10 minutes a day until we get to their typical bedtime, that's what needs to start happening now. And on the flip side, they're also going to have to be waking up earlier, so we want to prepare their bodies and their minds for that by even starting to wake them up earlier or closer to their typical wake-up time during the school year as well. So even if we start this now and they're not transitioning back into school in the month, that's great. We can start to make tiny changes to prepare their minds and their bodies for that transition. Another thing that I'd like to talk to you about is mask wearing, because we know that mask wearing is mandated in Massachusetts, and that the teachers and students, or the expectation is that teachers and students will be wearing masks and/or shields within the school environment. So if mask wearing is a challenge for your child, then start wearing masks around the house. Start making that something that is commonplace for them to see and have to at least attempt or try. If it is something that is particularly challenging for your child, it will be important for you to communicate that to either your child's ABA therapist or their teachers, so that they can start to really work with that, work with mask wearing with your child and be prepared to work with them on that. We don't want your child to be scared or frightened when they're entering the school and they see a bunch of adults and a bunch of children also wearing masks. So even wearing masks around your child to desensitize them to that as well will be important, even if they themselves are not wearing masks just yet. And then, of course, it's going to be important to think about talking to your child about the transition back to school using language and or visuals that work best for them. So social stories are one really nice way that we can do that and prepare your child for what a return to school is going to look like and how that's going to look different from their day-to-day now. So instead of waking up and heading downstairs to their, in their pajamas to sit at their computer, they're going to be expected to wake up and get dressed, and then have breakfast and transition into the car or onto the bus and to the school. So using social stories that explain that, using visuals from their actual day-to-day life, of their home, of their breakfast table, of their bus, of their school, of their classroom, can be really, really helpful. And along those same lines, using visual schedules can also be really helpful as well. So the visual schedule of the day at home, or a home-based learning day, versus a visual schedule of an in-person or school-based learning day, and starting to build those and look at the differences with your child between those two types of days. And then finally, a countdown calendar or a visual calendar, explaining to your child how many days left there are until the return to school, can also be really helpful. So, once your child returns to school, I think it's also very important that we remember that their minds and their bodies are going to be a lot more tired than they were within the home setting. So the increased transitions, learning time, increased learning, behavioral and adaptive demands will be quite the adjustment for them. So we need to anticipate that this transition, even though it's exciting, will likely result in fatigue and perhaps an increase in challenging behaviors. So anticipating these changes and responding with structured schedules, earlier bedtimes, and consistent routines will ultimately see you through. So, I'd really like to close today by saying that, as a parent myself, I know that the transition back to school is as exciting as it is anxiety producing. And so I'm here to remind you that the clinicians at the Lurie Center are here to individually support you and your children during this unique time and transition and all transitions moving forward. So happy Autism Awareness Month. We celebrate you today, this month, and always. Thank you for taking the time to listen. We wish you a wonderful, healthy, and safe return to school. Take care.